Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Trailer Talk, Cinematic Doctrine's semi-monthly segment in which we discuss some trailers that have released over the previous month. September, like August, landed us some great trailers, and I think there's a lot to be excited about this time around. First off, Carter and I dig into WandaVision, the first new property to release in the much-loved Marvel Cinematic Universe. Carter and I dig into the mystery surrounding this strange trailer that seems to only give us just enough, without giving us too much. But what we get is pretty awesome. A weird pseudo-retro sitcom with superheroes trying to fit in, paired alongside some typical sci-fi fighting action? That sounds great. Then we take a look at Warner Brothers' next big blockbuster, Dune. First thing first, we see whether or not Carter or I have actually read the classic sci-fi novel of the same name, and then fangirl over virtually everything about this trailer, from the somber and petrifying themes, unbelievable cast, and director Denis Villeneuve. We also get into a great conversation regarding content awareness and supporting content creators who in the past have done some questionable or sinful things. Then lastly, we go wild talking about the upcoming Star Wars property that everyone seems to love, The Mandalorian, and we go right into our excitement for Season 2. Speculate on what we can see in the trailer, and put forth our hopes for what we'll see in the upcoming season. Then we decide on which of these projects we're most excited for, so stick around to the end and hear what we land on. If you enjoy the show, you can always stop by Cinematic Doctrine's Patreon and show your support with a $3 monthly donation. Doesn't seem like much, but it really helps out. We've been able to purchase better equipment and improve other podcasting logistics. If you support the show through Patreon, you'll also gain access to some sick perks like voting on a movie we discuss at the end of each month, as well as exclusive access to the pre-show, a show where we talk about movies, Christianity, and life itself. There are over 4 hours of bonus podcast content for $3 flat, and you'll get to hear us talk about some awesome stuff God has been doing in our lives, hear about the bizarre work situations Daniel's been in lately, and remember times when DVDs used to have Easter eggs hidden in the menus. You can also keep up with us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Our Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group is the place to be if you want to chat movies and Christianity with other like-minded Christians. And don't be afraid to leave us a review and give us your unfiltered thoughts on the show. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, guess what? All of these trailers, they have written pieces on the website. And the coolest thing, they usually release 1 to 3 days after the trailer debuts. So you don't have to wait for Trailer Talk to hear what the team at Cinematic Doctrine thinks about these latest movies or trailers that are coming out. All of that is available at cinematicdoctrine.com, so be sure to check that out. All this will be available in the show notes. Without further ado, let's talk some trailers. So our first trailer for today we're going to be talking about is WandaVision. Which I don't know about you, but for me, I'm pretty stoked about this. I was stoked when the first image released. But yeah, WandaVision, created by Jacqueline Schaefer and directed by Matt Shakman, is an upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe miniseries. You thought you could get away from the MCU during COVID? That was not going to happen. First of its kind is this miniseries is for landing on Disney Plus, and it's going to happen sometime in December. It's a bit vague on what day that's going to be. I feel like I read a report that said December 1st, but all the stuff I've read lately has just said December. So just look forward to the month of December in general. The trailer opens up with a black and white, tight aspect ratio sitcom aesthetic evoking I Love Lucy and other such much-loved classics. Wanda Maximoff, also known as the Scarlet Witch, and Vision live in a small home that looks very much like a retro TV set, the kind where 3 walls are decorated and the 4th is ripped out so large lumbering cameras can easily pan across the scene. Vision, as we remember, is Tony Stark's old computer Jarvis turned sentient humanoid, but he still retains his inhuman makeup of red metallic skin and glowing stone in his forehead. Wanda has a quick line about how she wants us to fit in and keeping secret. And we see Vision reform his body to look more human, more normal. Like Paul Bettany, but without makeup. The two are happily in love, excited to live for their life together, and they just embrace with a passionate kiss and wedding garb. It's really sweet. It's clear WandaVision is more than a romantic comedy sitcom where two superheroes try to fit into normal life. Most notably, a scene in the trailer where at a I wrote comfortable dinner party, but it's more uncomfortable dinner party. Wanda and Vision are asked about their story, where they moved, why they don't have children, typical 50s rhetoric. And they soon realize they can't really answer the questions. This is when the trailer goes off the rails. We see the aspect ratio expand as our characters' minds begin racing for answers. The color returns to the screen, and Wanda and Vision realize something isn't right. Now, as the trailer states, and as fans of Marvel Cinematic Universe will remember, and I say all that to emphasize that this is a light spoiler. Well, I mean, I guess it's a heavy spoiler, but a light spoiler for those who haven't seen the trailer nor the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe to this point. Vision has been dead since the end of Marvel's Phase 3. In fact, apart from this fact, and apart from what little secrets were given in the WandaVision trailer, there's virtually no other information as to what the plotline is looking to be. If you recall, the last film in the Phase 3 of the MCU was Spider-Man Far From Home, and there's virtually nothing in this trailer to imply the events of that film, including the groundbreaking stinger at the end of the film featuring everybody's favorite J. Jonah Jameson. This is the first time in a long time we're going into a Marvel property pretty much having no idea what it is. It's just a lot of mystery and wonder. And all we can base off of WandaVision is that Vision is dead, but now he's not. So Carter, first off, the MCU is back. This is pretty cool. I gotta say, I was kind of tired of the MCU. I didn't think Far From Home was like a good ending. I always find it weird that the MCU ends their tentpole like phases with like just a small movie. I think even didn't I feel like Phase 2 ended with Ant-Man, which was really strange. But yeah, Far From Home was kind of like meh. But I like when the MCU is good, and WandaVision seems bizarre enough for me to enjoy it. But what do you think? This trailer was pretty crazy. MCU's back. What you thinking, Carter?
Yeah, one thing that was really interesting about this, Melvin, going into that trailer for the first time for me was honestly I wasn't that excited about it. I had heard kind of the premise of it, that it was set in this kind of like nuclear 50s family aesthetic. And then it was potentially in Scarlet Witch's head, which I thought that was interesting. But honestly, haven't been dying to watch that trailer. And I told you this as I'm watching it. I was somewhat creeped out by it, but also a little emotionally moved by it. And that was probably one of the biggest surprises I've had recently. And I think this really gave us a good taste of, at least I think, of what it's going to look like with these Marvel TV shows on Disney Plus. It's really interesting. It seems like they're taking a riskier route. They're looking to explore some themes and ideas that they might not be able to in a feature length movie where it's a big family outing twice a year for a family to go see a Marvel movie. Here they can play with the characters and our ideas of these characters a little bit more. Do you think that this gives us a good idea of what we can expect from Marvel on Disney Plus?
Yeah, I think the benefit of it being a miniseries is that if it wants to get into character drama, it has the time to do it. And some of the movies have handled character drama really well. And some of the movies have balanced action with their character drama. I think the initial Avengers movie does a good job of balancing action with character drama. I mean, the whole first Avengers is them getting along or learning to get along, but the way they learn to get along is by punching each other a lot, which is always, I mean, then it was exciting to see because nobody had really seen anything like it. Now it's a little tired, but it was this thing where it balanced the drama with the action. But you kind of have to do that when, like you said, the whole family's going to pack into the van, head on out, spend $130 on tickets and popcorn, and try and have a good time watching something on the big screen as opposed to the small screen. Because if it's the small screen, I mean, my dad says this, and I agree with it. If he's going to go to the movies, he wants to see something big and bombastic that's benefited by the big screen. And a drama typically isn't, although the drama kind of has the benefit of just like you're in a dark room where all you see is the drama unfolding. So it makes it much more intimate. So having this be a miniseries, I think I saw 6 episodes long. I can't remember, but I believe I saw 6. Gives us that time to take apart the drama that kind of just started I think it was Infinity War. I think we just were thrown into the WandaVision romance in Infinity War with like kind of nothing preemptively setting that up. I think there might have been a little bit in Civil War, maybe, but I can't remember. Was it Civil War? Maybe. I don't know.
That's when it began.
Yeah, because that was like Vision's first actual movie. Yeah, he was in Ultron, but it wasn't really like he wasn't really in it until he was in it. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to kind of get some more meat on those bones, because I know I have a friend of mine who might actually be listening to this one right now, who really was not convinced of the WandaVision romance. I thought it was handled well. The performances were very good in Infinity War, and that's what really sold me on their romance in that movie, even if it was just out of nowhere. But WandaVision's going to benefit it further by actually giving us reasons. And I think it also just opens up the door. The miniseries atmosphere opens up the door for more creativity, because it can linger on good ideas. Because the MCU, it's like a single movie where good ideas are maybe like 1 or 2 scenes, and then they just move on. And that's like, I don't want that. Like, if it's a good idea, I want to stay there for a bit. So give me 6 episodes of that, whether they're 30 minutes or an hour each. I'm cool with that. I'd love that. So yeah, I'm excited for WandaVision in that sense. Were you picking up on some of that like 50s boomer criticism that was coming on? I even mentioned it in the description earlier, where like they're sitting at this uncomfortable dinner scene. They just got married, I assume.
They're asking why they don't have kids, right?
Right, which is like, you just don't ask. Nowadays, not to ask that question. There are plenty and many reasons to not have kids. So and it can be very unfortunate to have those things revealed without you confessing them. But did you pick up on a bit of that? And if so, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think that would be a conversation you would hear in a modern sitcom. I've never seen an episode of New Girl, but I've heard things about New Girl. I've heard things about shows like that, these sitcoms like that, and or even something like Friends. We're going back to the 90s, where they would have that kind of conversation, like, hey, what about kids? Or, what just characters asking, whether it's romantic status or the kids that would come from that, asking about that. And I think it's interesting that they're taking that sitcom construct and putting it in the world of superheroes.
Yeah.
And that's really Marvel's benefit here. Marvel, with something like New Girl, obviously, that whoever's behind that, whether that's Universal or Paramount, like they don't have access to this intellectual property like Disney does with these superheroes. So it's interesting to put these superheroes in that kind of sitcom environment with a little twinge of Michel Gondry, a little twinge of some Kaufman and Gondry, if you get where I'm going with that, Mel.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, because I think you'd see that conversation a lot. And we're having a sitcom that just so happens to feature some superheroes.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes along the lines with like Disney's kind of cultural image that they're trying to build about diversity, and not just diversity, but like gender acceptance and stuff like that. There's a lot of fair criticism against how they handle that, and I, for the most part, agree with some of it. Not all of it. Some of it's too vitriolic to actually be good criticism of something. But in this case, I think that could be used well, because if it does decide to do like the normal family, even though they're not normal, which is clear because they're both superheroes, I don't mind that story in the MCU. Sure, I've seen other sitcoms or other movies that have handled personal family dramas well, really well, to the point of just being straight moving. Some of them horrific, but there are some things in the superhero genre that are not touched on. And I think using this as a metaphor for hidden secrets in a family or couple, that could be really good. But what I'm trying to get at is like a lot of couples and families and this and that have secrets that they want to keep hidden or are sort of like the skeletons in the closet that in some cases need to come out. And to see the MCU maybe go that direction would be really interesting. Like, obviously, the skeleton in the closet isn't really a skeleton. Like, they're superheroes. Like, that's pretty cool. But if you're setting it in the 50s aesthetic, which is very suburbia, copy paste kind of cookie cutter. I guess it would make more sense to say cookie cutter. That sounds more 50s than copy paste. Copy paste is so 90s and so hackers. But yeah, like having that sort of cookie cutter aesthetic, and yet they're actually different. There's something about them that's very different, and that's going to bring some tension. I think will be really cool. And I think it's going to be the sort of thing where they don't just want to be normal. They also are trying to hide. I think it'll be interesting to see, like, are they hiding in some sort of, I mean, this is some speculation based off of what we've learned after the last few movies, but is this set in an alternate universe and they're not supposed to be there? Is this like that episode of Doctor Who where the Doctor and Rose go back in time to stop something from happening, and when they do that, it affects time so bad that these like parasites come through time and space and are trying to correct it? And so is it like they're hiding in some sort of alternate universe and some sort of cosmic police is coming in to stop? So if they, act like everybody else, they'll be okay, which sounds a lot like some of the fears people have in the 50s, where it's like, if my family's falling apart, or if I've been assaulted by my boss, I don't want to do this or that because it'll ruin the status quo. All that to me sounds great. And if it's handled well, very cool. I think that'll be really neat. I don't mind any of that stuff at all. It makes for good drama. I think that's just how I land on it. I think it'll be cool. I also am just glad that the show looks weird. I like weird, so that looks cool. It kind of has that. I mean, yeah, you were getting into Kaufman stuff. It has a very Eternal Sunshine look to it, in the sense of just it just looks weird. It looks like we're going to see stuff we've never seen in the MCU, and I genuinely mean that as somebody who, whenever I go see an MCU movie, I'm typically like, I'm not going to see anything new here. It's just going to be the same thing. This looks like it's going to throw me for a loop, and I'm all for that because I like the MCU. I like when it does that. So, give that to me. That's what I want.
I'm with you, man. I'm excited. I think that, hitting on Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind, I think the one thing that really stuck out to me is this looks like it could be some kind of show. I mean, obviously there'll be funny moments, but it looks like something of a meditation on grief a little bit, if we're still operating in the same universe that we were with the Avengers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Spoiler alert, Vision is dead.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement all that.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
That's going to be neat because nobody's really died in the MCU in the sense of people lingering on it. When I think about the entire series as a whole, I think you can probably count on your hand how many prominent characters have died, and even then, how effective those deaths have been. For me, not many of them have been particularly effective, and that's always kind of a shame to me, because I like to be moved by movies. That's why I watch them. And I think WandaVision has that added bonus of it being sort of like, man, I mean, just like speculating on like if I don't know of any of the rumors around this. In fact, just hearing that it might be like set in like a fantasy world or an other world or an Elseworld. I guess Elseworld is DC, but or like in Wanda's head, or maybe a villain's controlling all this jazz. It could be really interesting to see it as like, if I can just like hide and act like everything's okay, even though it's not. That'll be really interesting in comparison to a death that may be permanent. In fact, I would hope that I don't hope that the worst thing happens to people ever, especially in real life, but also in shows. But like narratively, if it were to end in a way that's like acceptance of grief like that, I think that would be really cathartic to watch in a series where, in a franchise where just nobody dies.
There's no time for grief. We're moving on to the next big battle,
Yeah. I mean, half of the villains are still alive. They're just written out at this point. Abomination's still alive. The guy's like, how? I don't understand. So yeah, I'm excited. I look forward to it. As stated, WandaVision is slated to come out in December 2020. But if my memory serves me right, I think I also saw it was listed as December 1st. So keep your eyes peeled. But, just look forward to December. So now we're coming to Dune. Written and directed by Denis Villeneuve or Denis Villeneuve or Denis Villeneuve, who knows, who we all know and love from Sicario and Arrival, comes the latest attempt at adapting Dune, of which I think there are 3. I think there's like a Sci-Fi adaptation, a BBC adaptation, and everybody's favorite Lynch adaptation. Even Lynch, he loves that adaptation. You should Google that and see how much he loves his adaptation of Dune. But yeah, Dune, the groundbreaking and genre-defining literary classic by Frank Herbert. The trailer begins with a tease of sci-fi romance between 2 unbelievably popular actors, Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, who play Paul Atreides and Chani respectively. That's swiftly stripped away to show a more dramatic, large-scale, and cerebral atmosphere, beginning with a test. Paul Atreides is told to put his hand in a box. He is not allowed to remove it or he dies. Inside the box is pain, and as he endures, its metaphor is not only clear, but the epic science fantasy level of tragedy is at play here. Life is pain, and if you choose not to endure it, you die. Following this, we get some more direct plot points, such as Paul is a part of a lineage of rulers, albeit failed rulers, and his father is prophesied to lose his power. However, Paul has a unique level of power himself, alongside the ability to see things in the future. The level of these powers aren't quite discernible by the trailer, but it seems he's not only well equipped in combat, but he's also caught in a dramatic romance in which he knows something or someone he otherwise shouldn't, the aforementioned Chani. There are tons of action sequences shown in the trailer, a lot of environmental destruction that will make every Star Wars fan quote their favorite line from Attack of the Clones, and some excellent framing that seems to emphasize the small things that we often miss, akin to Denis Villeneuve's or Denis Villeneuve's usual visual profile, despite working with a different director of photography this time around. The official trailer does embrace a bit more of what we've come to see from bombastic sci-fi trailers nowadays, so much so that if you compare it to the teaser trailer seen during screenings of Tenet, you'll notice an entire tonal difference. Where the teaser trailer for Dune shown during Tenet was absurdly atmospheric, bordering on science horror with its majesty and power, as Paul's winces and grunts of the box test are overheard with silent shots of war and drama, the official trailer goes for the big blomps and stereotypical trailer format of nostalgia piano and an epic shot at the end, the massive sandworm. This is probably because Denis Villeneuve's last sci-fi epic, Blade Runner 2049, had a trailer so bizarrely atmospheric and mysterious that nobody saw the movie. Of course, there were many factors for why that film didn't perform well, but trailers are important, and if they don't click with general audiences, that's a death sentence. But I will say, I personally hope Dune captures the atmosphere of the teaser trailer more than the epic, borderline nonsensical brainlessness of the official trailer. And although Villeneuve or whatever, I can just never get it right, contains a fair level of questionable and immoral content in his films, specifically talking nudity here, he hasn't necessarily made a poor quality film, and from what I've heard, Dune doesn't really lend itself to containing anything R-rated, so fingers crossed that Dune is accessible to everyone in that sense. So I guess really the real question is, have we read Dune? And do we know anything about the story from the trailer? Apart from that, Carter, personally, I have not read Dune, and I've been sleeping on it. I think it's there's like a joke I read that's like, I think it was like an Onion article, and it was like college freshman finally decides he's going to read Dune before the end of semester, realizes he's graduating or something like that. So it's just like, it's definitely a book a lot of people say they want to read and just don't. So I'm a part of that camp. Are you, or have you bit the bullet? Have you read Dune?
It's a rite of passage, man. I did. I started it late 2018 because that was right around the time when casting was getting announced for Dune, and I was looking at the cast list, and I'm like, I got to read this. There's something about this, and already just looking at the description of it before I'd ever read the book, I was like, this has a chance to be Lord of the Rings meets not even Star Wars, because I think they're pretty different, but something like a John Carter, and that suspicion was really confirmed as I was reading the book, which honestly is one of my top 10 favorite books. It has the kind of lore that you find in the Lord of the Rings. It has the kind of gamemanship and backstabbing that you would find in a Game of Thrones show, even though I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I do know that that's kind of what that show is all about. And so it really has me excited because it looks like we have something on our hands that could reach the kind of cultural impact that Lord of the Rings had on our culture about 20 years ago. that's all that saying, taking into account the fact that the trailer didn't necessarily blow me away, like you, Mel, and I almost like the teaser trailer a little bit more than the full trailer, just because I feel like the teaser trailer,
I loved the teaser trailer.
It lined up so well with the book. And that box, that, you know, what's in the box, that box is called the Gom Jabbar. And it is, you kind of nailed the theme of it, but we get to see Paul Atreides, played by Chalamet, who is really the perfect guy to be playing this.
He's just like the perfect guy. He's such a good actor. He's been on a roll, man. I think he's had like maybe 20 movies in the last like 6 years. It's insane.
He's the DiCaprio of his generation, and he's worked with some incredible directors already. I mean, Christopher Nolan, Wes Anderson, all the guys. So it's really a coming of age story, and I'm so excited that it's in his hands, and ultimately it's in Denis Villeneuve's hands, who I think is one of the best working directors today. And I'm hoping this is a success where Blade Runner 2049, which I also loved, was not.
Yeah, that movie like just didn't do well at all.
and I'm with you, man. There were so many different elements that went into that. One, it was the trailers, and I think it's going to help them here that they have a star like Zendaya and Chalamet working together. I think that's already, you have, you know, a certain crowd that's going to show up. But for you, I know you talked about liking that teaser trailer. Was this, and for somebody who hasn't read the book, do you think my sentiment in believing that this could reach potentially, maybe not the same height, but close to the heights of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, do you think that's crazy, or do you think that's possible with what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think it could be possible. We're kind of in a weird stage where, because of streaming and let me say it this way, whenever streaming has been introduced to a format of media, it has become way harder for cultural phenomena to grab hold. Music is like that with Spotify. I would argue that the selling of books online has really impacted like the opportunity for a new Harry Potter or even a new Twilight. And which it's important to remember, those were popular before the movies. Game of Thrones was popular, but then really took off because of the show Game of Thrones. And like each format has sort of like this last tentpole show that each week would draw in something, or this new album that would always draw in something, or even this movie that would draw in something. Because like think about it this way. Like, is there a show like Breaking Bad that's on TV right now where it was like, this was the show to be watching? Or is there a show like, which granted Breaking Bad took off because Netflix renewed its life, but like The Walking Dead's first few seasons was like, everyone was watching them culturally. Harry Potter movies, everybody was going out. Marvel really, I feel like, was like the last thing to capture that when it comes to movies. And even after Endgame, it's sort of like, is there really any interest to keep watching? Like Endgame really like tied a bow on stuff, and moving forwards really like WandaVision looks great, but there's something different about watching WandaVision to me than to keeping up with the MCU, if that makes sense. So like, can Dune be that? Is kind of like your question. Will Dune kind of have that? I don't know.
More specifically, can Dune be, so it might not, I don't think it's going to make the kind of money that a Marvel movie could make, or even an Endgame
well, I mean,
movie.
Maybe it could, but yeah, I don't think so.
But who knows? But when I say the Lord of the Rings, what I mean is, you know, you have obviously that box office success. Almost all three made $1 billion. But then also the critical acclaim, which you have critical acclaim for Marvel movies, but winning Oscars is what I'm talking about.
Because like, yeah, Return of the King was Best Picture and got like, I think the whole series has like over 15 Oscars. The Lord of the Rings, right?
It's
I think
nuts. It's nuts for a fantasy franchise, and that's why, like, I'm thinking this movie could reach that kind of, not, you know, similar box office performance, if, you know, barring everything going on with COVID, and then,
barring the year we're living in, yeah,
yeah, and then maybe some Academy Awards.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think Villeneuve I've turned him into like a Hispanic guy. Villeneuve.
Danny Boy.
I think Danny Boy can definitely make some Oscar love. I think he has that propensity to do that when he caters well to the Academy, because let's be real, the Academy does have its preferences. That's why you never see horror movies get any love. And I think I think it could be a franchise that does well. Perhaps not the billion mark until maybe the second movie, if the first one does well and gets Oscar love. But that's also, I think, if we're talking franchise wise, if Villeneuve does the rest of the series, or pardon me, as we're now calling him, if Danny Boy directs the rest of the series. Because I think, isn't this first movie is planned to be the first half of the first book? Is that correct?
What I'm thinking, that is correct. And what I'm thinking is they shot both of them at the same time, kind of like Lord of the Rings, because why not? I mean, and really what I'm thinking is they have probably a 5-hour cut right now, and they're dividing it in half.
Like Blade Runner 2049 had a 4-hour and 15 cut or something.
Yep.
So there's kind of jokes online. Well, Dennis released the 4-hour cut. I could believe that, because he has had a turnover of basically a movie a year until he started working on Dune. Danny Boy was doing a movie a year for like 5 years, and they were all extremely well rated. I think it was like Prisoners, Enemy, Arrival, Incendiaries, I think, was the first one of those, and then Sicario, Blade Runner. That was all in the same, like, 1 year after another after another.
What a run.
And then
what
Dune,
a run,
yeah,
man.
it's insane. And then Dune took 2 years, I think. This is releasing after 2 years. It's possible. I think that's totally possible. I think the other difficulty too is they have so many actors, they just had to line up casting for it, but and get the right days for everybody to work. But also, I figure if Villeneuve asks you to be in a movie, you're gonna block out that week to make sure you show up on set.
Oh,
so
yeah. He's got enough clout right now. I think it's funny because I don't know if this is intentional, but the past two big movies, Blade Runner 2049 and this one, have come out the same year as a Nolan movie, and both are working at Warner Brothers. Both are tours with big visions who critics and fans love. So it's I'm not going to say that he's going for Nolan's place in Hollywood, because Blade Runner didn't really work out that way. But
yeah,
it's interesting to see, like, these are two guys who really can compete. And the same way you drop everything for Nolan, I think you drop everything for a Villeneuve.
Is Tarantino also Warner Brothers? I think Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was a Sony movie, but has he always worked with Sony?
So he's done 2 movies with Sony. He did Django and Hollywood, but everything else has been with the Weinstein Company, which we know is not doing too well these days.
Which now we know why he is not part of the Weinstein Company. Yeah,
Yep.
my wife and I have sort of like, just like whenever we put on a movie just unwittingly, and that logo comes up for the Weinstein Company, we're just like, no! It's always, it's amazing how much a man's legacy ruins so much. Man, sin is the worst. I hate it.
Sin. It is, man. It shows the corrosive nature of sin. Like the we could call them maybe secular critics. They can't really understand it, but they just know that they know it's not fun to see that, or watching a movie with a Kevin Spacey. Like, sin does damage.
Like Baby Driver. It's hard to watch because Kevin Spacey's in it. And a couple of the lines are just too prophetic from Baby Driver. It's like insane. And then talking about Danny Boy here with Dune, and then we've mentioned Blade Runner a couple times. I mean, the guy has had issues, not just with writing women, not as bad as Nolan does. Nolan is just very bad at writing women in his movies. But also, where Nolan is bad at writing women, Danny Boy has a lot of nudity in some of his movies, Blade Runner notwithstanding, and it's typically female nudity, and it's bad. It's bad. That is a bad thing. that is a bad thing. That is wrong. Nakedness should be covered, not because, oh, you're ugly, don't show yourself. No, because your beauty is for somebody else. It is for your spouse. It is for privacy. It is just not for everybody to see on a big movie screen or privately on your television. And it is sometimes hard, like even listing this movie here and knowing that we were probably going to talk about Blade Runner, I even wrote it in. in the script whenever like talking about like why does the Dune trailer look like a sci-fi epic? Well, because Blade Runner's trailer was so weird and it gave you nothing. Yeah, it's like tough because there are like people that we just talked about Chalamet and like him having a killer acting streak, but like the movie that really kicked him off was Call Me by Your Name, and that's a really hard movie for a lot of people to wrestle with, especially in the Christian community to recognize as a movie that exists. And really, even just looking at the list, I mean, Zendaya was in Euphoria from HBO. That's a really challenging thing. Josh Brolin sure is in some challenging stuff. Yeah, it's tough. It is us having to be Act 17, like the whole podcast we're doing here at Cinematic Doctrine. I mean, we aren't asking anybody to be part of the world in the sense that you're swearing allegiance or sinning. But Act 17, we want people to be educated in stepping into a community that they may not know about or want to know more about, and be able to confidently speak with people in another community. Of course, our show is about film community. And Danny Boy, I mean, this guy's killing it as far as like the film community is concerned. And it's important to be aware of that, but it's also important to make sure that you're always doing that in the lens of Christ. I mean, even just, I was reading 1 Corinthians today. Man, I always love when I get to talk about what I've been reading on the podcast. And 1 Corinthians Paul was talking about like, I will be a Jew to Jews insofar as I'm following Christ. I will be lawful for those who are lawful under the understanding that I'm no longer under the law. He says I will be unlawful with those who are unlawful insofar as I'm under the law of Christ. Ultimately kind of getting to I'll be weak for those who are weak, so that the gospel never has any walls for who I'm communicating to. And so it's a hard thing to navigate. I felt inclined to share that because of what we're talking about here. I mean, it's tough, but it's important. And, pray that Dune doesn't have nudity. Doesn't sound like it should.
It shouldn't. I think we're in good hands here, but I'm really glad that you brought that up, Melvin, because the key here is, as Christians, we don't want to be a part of the world. We want to gauge it though, and be able to look at, a lot of these people are very talented, and where does that talent come from? But God, it's God who's given them this talent, and then they've used it for some really awesome, pretty harmless things, and then also some pretty destructive things that have worldviews that are very clear. Something like Call Me by Your Name, which is incredibly well made, but has a very destructive worldview that it really leads to death. It's as sin does, and so I think it's really interesting as Christians to where we want to be open with these things, and if watching a movie or something like that is going to cause somebody to stumble,
right,
and it might not cause us to stumble, then we have the responsibility as brothers or sisters in Christ to honor that brother who might struggle with this movie. But I love that you brought that up, because it highlights the gifts of God that these actors have, though sometimes they're not used for His glory. But thankfully, I think we're going to be in good hands with Dune. Just reading the book, I don't remember anything like that. I do remember it being very Lord of the Rings in that way, but
yeah,
it should be getting a PG-13 rating too, just because of the budget that Warner Brothers gave him. I'm sure they're going to want to keep it pretty family friendly.
Oh yeah, they do not want to restrict it. Yeah, they do not want to restrict this movie. They want everybody to go see. So yeah, Dune, as of this recording, is slated to release December 18th, 2020 in theaters, but that could just change. So did it change, actually?
This is the $1 million question.
Do you know if it changed, or is it still December 18th?
It's still December 18th, but
okay,
this is the $1 million question. Melvin, and this is going to be on the record. Do you think it's going to make that December 18th?
Oh my gosh. Oh man, I want it to, because I'll see it. I'll go. I will do it. I love December. I love the winter. I think it just makes me happy, and anything that I could be doing then I'll feel happier doing. And so going to see a movie in December in winter will just be awesome to me. Practically, like, based on the track record of movies and the United States of America's fight against coronavirus, No, I do not. I do not. I think it wants to stay there because December 18th is basically prepping for, Christmas break. But this whole year is just different. Christmas break is not Christmas break for a lot of people. I thought to myself, like, financially wise, what am I going to do for Christmas? Some Christians might be listening and be like, well, don't you know it's about Christ, so you could just honor Christ. Yeah, I'm gonna do that, but I also want to give gifts to people because I love people and I love having reasons to do that. I already kind of do it all the time, but it's fun wrapping it up in wrap. So, and I'm like, if I'm already thinking about like financially how to handle that, I mean, are people going to financially be able to go see Danny Boy's big blockbuster? Like, I don't know. I think it could get pushed, and I think it could get pushed in next year straight up. But I don't know. I don't know. This is going to be weird. So, yeah, guys. I mean, it's slated for December 18th, but it maybe not. In fact, it could literally change between as of recording, editing, and posting. So, just double check what we're saying here. But as for something that we're pretty sure is not going to have its date changed, we're going to talk about the Mandalorian Season 2 trailer. Before I get into this next trailer, I got to say this month gave us some really just awesome trailers. And the announcements for these films, man, I'm just so excited. Like, it just feels good to be excited about things again. DC fandom kind of had that for a lot of people with just a bunch of DC movie trailers, and I think people were just happy to like see new things to get excited about. And I didn't get like that all that crazy excited about DC fandom stuff. You can hear about that in the last trailer talk. But this trailer talk, I mean, WandaVision looks really cool. Dune, I want Dune. And then Mandalorian season 2, this looks good. There's just so much to be excited about for this trailer. I mean, right off the bat, we are nailed with an intense tone setter, a busted up, barely functioning spacecraft hurling through the vast nothingness of space, Tibetan throat singing giving an air of ancient mystery to the lawless world of the Outer Rim, the Mandalorian and the child stepping into the light of the city outskirts, and a cryptic declaration that Mando needs to find out where the child belongs, even if it means taking him to the Mandalore's long-standing enemy, the Jedi. I mean, what else from this trailer even matters? That sounds really cool. For myself, what made The Mandalorian so enjoyable was that it stepped away from the tired Skywalker saga, didn't try to reinvent an already established narrative, and decided to give us some new characters in a new setting at a new time period. I mean, yeah, we've seen between 3 and 4 before, but this, as far as I'm concerned, is just totally new. Each trilogy in the Skywalker saga is virtually the same thing with a new coat of paint. It never improves beyond its established narrative, only actively losing qualities with each iteration. The original trilogy succeeds in theory and execution. The prequel trilogy succeeds in theory, but fails in execution. And then the sequel trilogy, for me, just failed in theory and in execution. It just wasn't very good to me. But The Mandalorian steps aside and says, why are we telling the same story over and over just to fail? Let's cover something new and just give life to Star Wars again. So the result, although not without fault, is a series that makes the Empire, or at least the big bad, actually scary again. The result are characters that we get to learn about because from the start we have no basis to speculate their origin or to cry, they wouldn't do that, because there's no canon established for them. Apart from the adorable puppet that is Baby Yoda, we all love him because we don't know anything about him. His mystery is part of his character. But let's also be real here. We love him because he's adorable and he demands protection. So look, I'm just excited. I cannot wait until October 30th when the show starts. I'm just glad to be enjoying Star Wars again because it's a perpetual machine of disappointment and fan outrage. But when it comes to Star Wars, one can't help but say, this is the way. So, I mean, I don't even really need to expand on what I just read. I'm excited for Mandalorian Season 2, but are you excited for Mandalorian Season 2?
I am. I think that one of the funniest conversations that I had with two of my good friends, Colton and Cameron, if you guys are listening.
Shout out.
We were watching the trailer. Shout out. We're big fans of Star Wars, and I would say my two friends much bigger than me, though I really do enjoy Star Wars. And we were watching the trailer, and throughout it, for me, I was really interested to see what Ahsoka would look like. There had been a lot of casting rumors that have not been confirmed yet. And so
Interesting.
watching the trailer, the first thing that I was thinking about was what is, I was trying to pick out a lot of these rumors, again, that have not been announced, and trying to see if we're going to see any of these characters. So somebody like an Ahsoka, my friends and I, we were kind of arguing like, I think that's Ahsoka. I think that was her. I think that was who is Rosario Dawson, who's been rumored to be playing Ahsoka. And, that brought up the hilarious story of how on the Mandalorian set, they had going to and fro the set, they had to wear these cloaks over them, very Jedi-like, because they didn't want to let out the secrets of the season. And it sounds like
that's funny.
After the success of season 1, they are bringing out the big guns here. I mean, I've heard rumors like old Boba Fett's going to show up. I've heard obviously Ahsoka Tano, which I believe she's in the trailer. She's the one who pops up and then disappears in the cloak,
like at that pirate planet where they're like on a dock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's her, and so it's fascinating to see. Like, man, I'm so thankful that Star Wars is just pulling out all the stops. I want to see a big Star Wars epic, and you know what? If it's in TV show form, that that works for me. I don't think I would have wanted that a few years ago, but I find myself getting really excited for it.
Yeah, a lot of expanded Star Wars content lends itself to being a series as opposed to a movie. And honestly, I think it could lend itself to being a good series of movies, but we've also seen that just the current lead, whether you're the kind of person who just doesn't like Kathleen Kennedy, or you're just the kind of person who doesn't like Star Wars or the decisions, or Rian Johnson, if you're a part of that group, whatever. But for me, it's just, I think there's just been a fundamental issue across the board with handling Star Wars on the big screen. But on the little screen, man, like I think I've always heard that it's been handled extremely well. I mean, everything I've heard about like the show on the small screen or Star Wars content on the small screen has been great. I mean, Dave Filoni on the Clone Wars, as far as I've understood, Dave Filoni, and someone might just email or rage in the comments and be like, Melvin, you get everything wrong about Star Wars. Also, the prequel series or the sequel series is good. But Dave Filoni, as far as I've understood, has kind of been the showrunner for the Clone Wars up to the end, and then helped handle a lot of the other extended show, like canon shows. And apparently, he's been an executive producer on The Mandalorian, and a lot of people consider the positives of The Mandalorian to him, that he's basically like on shows, on television shows, there's something called a show Bible, and the show Bible has all the specific notes and nuances that are required to help the writers and the actors handle like what they're supposed to be doing. It's mostly for writers though, so that when they write their shows, their episodes, they can reference the show Bible to confirm certain bits of canon. And I feel like Dave Filoni's mind is just a show Bible of Star Wars. And that's why he's able to sneak in things that are nice little tidbits for fans of extended canon and lore. But also, you're not losing anything if you don't know any of that stuff. One of the big issues whenever they get into really like fan servicey things is that they're catering to a specific group and they lose a lot of what's accessible to people. And it seems like whenever I've heard about The Mandalorian from both Star Wars fans who just like the movies or maybe just like the original trilogy, and Star Wars fans who just own tons and tons and tons of Star Wars content and books, everything he works on seems to really hit the nail on the head for them. And so I feel like that's sort of like what's nice about The Mandalorian, is that like it just makes everybody happy and no one's complaining. I think I remember like a hard drive. What is it? The Hard Times did like a satire title of like, Disney doesn't understand why nobody's arguing about The Mandalorian. And it's just like, it's so it's like so true. Like everyone I knew was just like, hey, that's pretty good. I like it. And everybody wanted Baby Yoda stuff, but it didn't exist. So I don't know. That was a total misfire. But yeah, I'm excited. Are you kind of hyped for Sam Hargrave being a director for the stunt coordinator for this? For those who are listening, Sam Hargrave directed Extraction, which was that Netflix movie at the beginning of the year that was really like, it was like a grungy John Wick movie. Basically, he does a lot of stunt coordination, and he was invited to come in to help with a lot of the action sequences in The Mandalorian. Yeah, are you hyped for that? Like some amped up action for Mandalorian season 2?
Again, I think that they're really pulling up all the stops on this one because I think that the brain trust at Disney, they know. They might not say it, but they know they screwed up. They screwed up with that sequel trilogy. And I'm a Last Jedi fan. I'm one of those rare guys. I think it works as a single movie, but along with the trilogy, it doesn't flow. The whole thing was, as we know, poorly conceived and really didn't have a plan from the beginning. So I think they know they messed up the movies, and it does suck. Every time I think of the ending of Rise of Skywalker, my ire rises.
Yeah.
I'm in awe that J.J. Abrams, who's a competent director, could do that. So moving on from that, I think it's a like I do love that there is a piece of Star Wars that everybody's like, hey, I pretty much enjoy that. And I think the brain trust at Disney knows that. And I think they're like, we're going to stay away from movies right now. And we're going to put all our resources behind this really cool Boba Fett show, even though it's not about Boba Fett.
Right.
And it kind of gives, it gives the hardcore Star Wars fan what they've always wanted to see. And it gives, the generic, Star Wars fan, hey, I get to look at this really cute baby Yoda the entire time. And
Yeah.
I think that combo works so well. And so
It does.
having a guy like Sam Hargrave, man, again, that just speaks to the fact, like, they were not messing around. They wanted to make sure that this was everything and more, and that it built on the really knockout success of the first Mandalorian season. And I think this is really what's keeping people on Disney Plus. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's not much else on there that makes me kind of sit up and pay attention. So I think they know that, and I just love that they're getting top talent to kind of help bring this season to fruition.
Yeah, it's one of these weird things. Just a brief tangent on Disney Plus. It's one of these weird things where I think they're going to look back at this year and think we could have done what Netflix did and just had good content coming out at least once a month. Netflix will do it. Okay, I won't say good content, but Netflix will pop out content every week. And that's what keeps people coming back. And whatever sticks will stick for a couple weeks. And that's why Netflix is killing it this year. I mean, I think the first quarter, they got a lot of subscribers. I think they made half of the subscribers they did in all of last year in the first quarter of this year, and or something like that, or they doubled it. I can't remember. They're basically the atmosphere, the vibe I'm trying to give you right now, listener, is that Netflix killed it in the beginning of this year. And Disney, I think, is looking back and going, oh man, we should have invested in this first year of Disney Plus with a lot of shows and things. And like they had some stuff come out. I mean, they had their High School Musical, the musical TV show, whatever. And that kind of interested me because it looked so passively satirical. Just the title alone, I loved. And I like musicals, so I'm killer for that. They had Stargirl, which didn't go over too well. We reviewed that on the podcast, actually, if you want to go back and check that out. And then they had Hamilton, but that wasn't supposed to even come out this year. That was supposed to be like next year. And then they're like, oh, we can't put out, like, what is it? Captain America and Winter Soldier, the Falcon or whatever. Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, yeah.
They probably couldn't release it because they needed Black Widow to come out because it's all connected in the canon.
I think they hadn't shot. I think they still had to shoot some of it, too.
I think really? Okay.
They were right in the middle of shooting when
everything shut down.
Happened.
So, okay, so I'm not right there, but basically, like, I think they're missing that, but that tangent's for some other time. I'm mostly curious. Here are two things that I'm curious about, and I think these are the best ways to end this segment. We're going to get all Collider here. We're going to get all Screen Rant here. We are going to speculate on season 2. I have 4 things that I wrote down that I think are interesting to see if they happen. And they're basically all ridiculous, but they all make me very happy. One is, here's my serious. I'll start with my serious one. I'm really excited to see how the fact that like the big bad was kind of like the fallen empire in season 1 of The Mandalorian. And how whether or not Werner Herzog was trustworthy or not, man, I can't believe they got him to be in this movie, in that show.
That was a get, man. That was a serious get.
That was just so good. He was loving it. All he had to do half the time was sit down anyway, so he didn't have to do a lot of work, but he just loved it. But I'm really excited about season 2 basically making the big bad the Jedi. The Jedi, the prequels really helped set up that the Jedi weren't always moral. I think some people don't give enough credit to that creative choice. I think that's really interesting. And I think The Last Jedi benefits itself by having basically going back to that, and The Last Jedi basically having Luke be like, but I failed once. And if I can fail once with such power, how can I ever be trusted again? Which is important for Christians to think about. It should orient you, of course, to think more about your need for Christ. If you can have so much power and fail, good, you need to go to Christ. And so this season 2 giving us the opportunity to see more like, not immoral Jedi. I don't like watching people be evil, but like the questionable ethics of the Mandalorians versus the Jedi, I think will be really interesting. And I'm excited to see how that's going to be handled. I don't really have any speculations on that, so I guess I don't have something to speculate there. But here are my 3 bizarre speculations, and I'm going to read them to you, and I want to hear if you have any. So first off, I would just give me the dumb stuff. I want to see the Mandalorian go to Tatooine, sit at the cantina with all the scum and villainy, and there's old Ben drinking some glowy mixed drink. I just want that. I want to see. I guess he won't be that old. Ben Kenobi, old Ben Kenobi. He won't be that old, but he's going to be there, and I want it.
One quick thing, Melvin. I don't think. I think this takes place after Return of the Jedi.
Is it after Return of the Jedi, or is it?
That's.
I thought it was.
I'm almost.
You're right.
100% positive, but I could be wrong. I'm not saying 100%, but
okay, you're right. I was so wrong.
I'm very positive that it is like, I think it's 8 years after Return of the Jedi, and so I don't want people to just light you up and be like, "You're not a Star Wars fan."
So here are my 2 speculations. I'm keeping all this in. Here are my 2 3 speculations. It's a Force Ghost Ben Kenobi. That's what I want. All right, second speculation. Maybe the child and Yoda meet up in some sort of Force vision. That could be interesting. And then my third speculation, which I think is just adorable. Maybe 2 Mandalorians kiss, but their helmets are still on, so they just clang their heads together in passionate romance. I think that'd be cute. What do you think's going to happen, Carter, now that we have established that this is all set up after episode 6?
Yeah, I think, I don't think we're going to be seeing an old Ben. I think we're going to
see Palpatine. Somehow Palpatine is back.
We're seeing Solo, Harrison Ford, baby.
Digging back up out of his grave.
Yeah. But I'm really excited, and this is my big prediction. I think we're seeing a Boba Fett. I think we're going to see Boba Fett a little past his prime. It's been a few years after Return of the Jedi. He's been in the Sarlacc pit for a little bit, but I know it. I believe that he got out, and I think we're going to see him. And when that moment happens, that will be – I think that will be akin to it's the same kind of reaction I had when Darth Vader is just taking all those guys out in Rogue One. I mean, that was everything I'd ever wanted. And
yeah, I want to watch a killer bad guy kill good guys. Yeah.
Except this bad guy's Darth Vader. That's the key. This guy. And so I think we are going to get Boba Fett, and that's my big expectation for the season.
I have a great idea. How about Boba Fett comes out of the Sarlacc pit after 3 days, is converted to do what the Lord told him to do, and he goes and prophesies at Mos Eisley. And he basically says, repent from your sin. And then he steps over to stand at the same spot Luke and Obi-Wan stood. And he sits there and he goes, all right, Lord, are you going to kill them? And then the Lord gives him a little leaf and says, do you do well to be angry? And then we're going to realize Dave Filoni over here is trying to preach to everybody the story of Jonah. How big brain is that, dude? That's the most galaxy brain you can see.
Hey, that would be. The Sarlacc pit was the big fish, and now now he's been shot out. So,
I'm all right, guys. I'm putting it down, putting money down. Oh, 1 cent. I will mail Carter 1 cent if that happens. And if it doesn't happen, no. I will mail Carter. I will mail Carter 1 cent if it happens. No.
If it doesn't happen, I'll mail you 1 cent. Okay, that's Melvin. That's
I always
how
get that
confident.
wrong. It's like I'm not gonna bet against myself. Okay, fine. If it doesn't happen, you owe me 1 cent.
Yeah.
Oh man, you get to hear how my brain works after staying up late and recording for 1 hour in a room that's making me sweat. I'm falling apart, guys. This is what it's like to podcast. Oh man. So Mandalorian season 2 is slated to come out October 30th. I haven't heard if it's weekly, but I'm pretty sure it will be. So in closing, Carter, man, these are some really good stuff, but which of the 3 things here are you most excited for? Are you excited the most for WandaVision, Dune, or The Mandalorian season 2?
Yeah, I really am excited for what Disney's doing with their streaming service. I don't want to put them down because I think they've got some really quality content coming out, but really there's nothing that can compare with Dune for me. And that would, even if I hadn't seen a trailer for it, Dune would still be my most anticipated, just because I think the 2 mediums are different. With TV, you're going to have a longer form of storytelling, and for me, movies have always been my bread and butter. That's always been what I love.
Yeah.
And I do think they're really on 2 different planets, though they use similar language to get across certain stories and themes.
Right.
But movies for me, that's they have my heart. And then you put a movie with Denis Villeneuve and the cast that he's got. It's Dune, easy, but
yeah, this is tough for me because I don't know anything about Dune to be excited about Dune, and I'm not. I don't know. It's like I'm excited for Dune, but I don't know if I can pick that one. I think I might have to land on WandaVision or Mandalorian season 2. And I know that like all of the big movie fans are like, Melvin, what? Why aren't you picking the internet's boyfriend is in Dune? Why aren't you picking Dune?
Your page is called Cinematic Doctrine. It's not called Television Doctrine.
I know. I'm so sorry.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
I think I'm really excited for WandaVision, which I know is going to make every A24 stan and every film bro just so mad at me right now to pick the Marvel thing to be excited for. But I don't know. It's just something about WandaVision fascinates me and really interests me. I like all the actors that are in it. I like that it's like, I like to see when the Marvel universe takes B-level characters and makes them A-level. Like Iron Man was that. Immediately they turned a B comic hero into like an A comic hero. It was insane. Like that's insane that they did that, and it worked. And then they did it with Guardians, and they're amazing. They're like their own movies practically. Guardians 1 and 2. They're so separated from the MCU pretty much because they're just in the universe that they can be their own movies, and that helps them out. But they're just so good. And they're characters that just nobody knew about. And that's awesome. And I think Scarlet Witch and Vision are just bizarre enough. I mean, Vision looks the most comic booky of every hero. He's just a floating red dude with a rock in his head. That is so stupid. I love it. And they're going to try and make me fall for their romance all over again. I'm down for that. So I think I'm going to have to land WandaVision, even if I know Dune is the right answer. So
don't worry, guys. I'm going to make sure that I rebuke Melvin after this. I don't want to do it here, but I'm going to rebuke him after this. He needs to be rebuked in love by a brother in Christ after that.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Trailer Talk. We hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy the show, always feel free to share your thoughts with a review, follow us on social media, check out the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group, or support us on Patreon and get some sick perks. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier. Thanks so much, Mom, Dad, and Melanie. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support means the world to us. All important links will be in the show notes. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck! We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.